I am amazed that something so small that was hidden in stigma could have such huge consequences for positive. And I am curious what other keys to reversing cycles of poverty and violence against women and inequity are hidden that we haven't found and discovered yet. What I do know is that it's okay that we don't all care about the same thing. It's important that we each follow our passion because literally the world's future depends on it. Each of us matter, and it is our passions, no matter how small, no matter how taboo, no matter how different, it's the one that calls to each of us that matters.
Welcome to the Go Go Bistro podcast, where we dish up inspiration for women who are hungry for change and ready to make it happen. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, creator, and empowerment coach who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders ride the waves of change with ease and grace. I now work with women to step into change and unleash the power they have to create a life they love. This is a space to let go of the fear and say yes to possibility. Whether you're contemplating a change in your career, relationship, health, lifestyle, or anything in between, nothing is off the table. I'll be serving up simple insights to help you manage the ups and downs of change and share my interviews with successful women who took a leap of faith to create the life they knew they were meant to live, sharing their wisdom, advice, and all the juicy lessons they've learned along the way. So join me at my favorite little two-top, pull up a chair, and let's get started. Do you ever wonder how many decisions you've made in your life that have led you to a place you are today? Do you ever think about the opportunities you wish you said yes to along the way that may have changed the course of your life? The path of our lives is paved by the decisions we make. Saying yes is often a gamble, and the driving force behind that particular choice at any given time is often unknown. Perhaps it's a feeling or intuition that tells us that being open in that moment will lead us closer to where we want to be. Whatever it is, the power of yes is undeniable, and it can set our lives in directions we never thought possible. In today's episode, Celeste Mergens shares with us how saying yes in her life opened her up to greater learning, humility, empathy, and understanding, and by challenging those who told her it can't be done, she created a life beyond her wildest dreams. Celeste is the founder and former CEO of Days for Girls International. Since 2008, Days for Girls has restored days of education and opportunity to over 2.9 million women and girls in over 145 countries on 6 continents through providing access to sustainable feminine hygiene solutions and health education. Celeste has led Days for Girls to develop a global network of over 830 volunteer chapters and teams and social enterprise programs in 13 countries. She has spread her word on the TEDx stage and has been a 2-time featured panelist at the UN Commissions on the Status of Women. Days for Girls won the SEED Award for Gender Equity and Entrepreneurship in 2015, is a 2-time Girl Effect champion, and was named by the Huffington Post as the next 10 organization poised to change the world in the next decade. Celeste, we are beyond thrilled to have you here. Welcome to Go Go Bistro.
So happy to be here with you.
Well, Celeste, your story is so textured, and there are so many serendipities that have happened in your life that I don't even know where to begin. But I thought that we would start by talking a little bit about your background and just kind of how I know that some of the main shifts happened after you had a trip, but let's talk a little bit about your story and your background before that all happened.
I had something I call the gift now, though I didn't at the time, of being able to experience hunger and poverty in a really significant way as a child. And we would at times experience being without a home, being hungry. And I think a really big turning point for me that I didn't recognize until recently was when I was about 5 years old. I was at a state park that we were living at the time. I was walking along a sidewalk and feeling the warmth of my feet, and a dog walked into my view, a little white fluffy dog, and it had a sparkling rhinestone collar that went all the way to the owner's hand, and she had a half-eaten apple. And she threw it in the dumpster that happened to be by where I was standing. And I remember watching the arc as it hit the bottom. I'm listening, going, wonder if I could climb in there and get that and still be able to get back out. Because honestly, it had been a little bit since I'd had a meal. And I was pondering on that when I had that feeling in the back of your neck that someone's staring at you. And sure enough, she was looking me up and down, giving me the look and said, "Where are your shoes, girl?" And I remember what I said because I used to think of her as Cruella de Vil and would run it through my head over and over. And I stood there and said, "I'm toughening my feet." In that moment, it was like a mirror turned around and I could see what she saw when she looked at me. I could see and feel that she saw me as small and dirty and unkempt and saw the bare feet and too small clothes. And a feeling in me right after the shame and the guilt and the smallness I felt in that moment just welled up, and I wanted to say, "I'm not from here. I am not what you see." And before I could even say a comment, she turned around and was walking away. But that feeling stayed with me. It was such a core experience that I kept thinking about it. And while it was nagging at me in a negative way, it also kept inviting me to realize that we are not what people think we are. And we are not our circumstances. We're far more than that. And over the years, I look for ways to help others relieve poverty without thinking of them as other, but rather thinking of them as someone who could overcome the circumstances. And it really shaped how I parented, how I do work in the world. And I'm really, really grateful for that moment that at the time was painful.
That's amazing to me. I mean, what a pivotal moment, I feel like. I know that you were working in sustainability, right? And that took you to Kenya. Let's talk a little bit about what led you to Kenya.
I had been working with a family friend on their family foundation project, and it was in a place called Gamano, way out from Nairobi, really arid, so arid at the time that there was a lot of difficulty because of lack of water. And we were trying to figure out ways to make it more sustainable for them to have access to water, education, agricultural practices that would be more able to meet their needs. And that was our focus. We were looking for a certain healthcare model that could be applied in the community. And the dignitary that was showing us this project in the slums of Kibera near Nairobi invited us to see an orphanage. Now, this orphanage opportunity for me at first was like, I think my heart would get broken, but I believe in saying yes. So we went. And the children, of course, I was just smitten by them and wanted to help. So I brought the same sustainable kinds of solutions to this orphanage. But in 2008, 500,000 people were displaced in an election that was so close that everybody turned to violence over suspicion of the other side. Imagine the terrible outfall. This orphanage grew to a reported 1,400 children, which is still hard to believe or imagine in the space that was provided. We were getting calls for, and now you know why this is a big deal. They needed food. They'd been out of food for 2 days. When I heard that, I, of course, know what it feels like to be without food for a few days, and I wanted nothing more than to help these children. I was pleading for some kind of genius idea because we had already sent in months preceding everything we had, and our friends had. My friends were now crossing the street to go on the other side, knowing I was going to ask for help for the children. And so I was out of ideas. And I went to bed still pleading for a solution. I woke up at 2:30 in the morning with it going through my head, have you asked what the girls are doing for feminine hygiene? I literally gasped. I had never thought to ask that. I ran to the computer to email, didn't expect an immediate answer. This was 2008. There weren't smartphones everywhere. And I got an immediate answer. And all he said was nothing. They wait in their rooms. Now, these rooms, bunk beds are end to end and side to side, packed in like 50 children in a room, 2 to 3 on each level of the bunk. How do they possibly wait in their room? And it turned out they were sitting on pieces of cardboard for days. No access to the classroom, no access to taking care of their personal needs for days. And we knew we needed to fix that. And good news, I was able to raise money for food and the other things they needed and single-use disposable pads. It's all I knew of at the time. But because of my experiences personally, I knew that if we sent money and they needed food, they would rightly use it for food. So how do you make something they could count on month after month? And that was the second question that started Days for Girls.
When you saw this problem, I know you had been in sustainability, which is did this lead you to Kenya, or was that on a trip with a friend? Were you there for business, or was it more like you were there for personal reasons, and then this kind of came out of it?
I was there helping them personally, and the experience and specialty of being able to focus on sustainable development was something we were doing together. I actually audited a master's degree in sustainable solutions. And of course, that too is because in an early experience, I decided, no, people need solutions that work for them. It is not they that are the problem. It is the issue and the circumstance. And so you can imagine how much that meant to me.
Oh, I can only imagine. Yes. I mean, how did you go about raising money? Did you have contacts or people that you could go to? Like, how did that?
Oh, man, we had a garage sale in October. It snowed. 2 people came. We had car washes. We had a friend had an antique pinball machine and offered to sell that for resources we needed. We had things that we sold. We did everything. We had a golf classic earlier in the year, and we did everything we could think of to keep bringing in resources for them. And you can imagine when we weren't able to tap into huge reserves from a lot of people, how we were really focused on making solutions that would work month after month rather than single time results. So that had been my focus. And so you can see how I would go right away to how do we make a solution people can count on.
How did this all manifest into the organization as it is now? Were you able to build that slowly, or how did that all happen?
Well, honestly, we told people about the issue that had happened, that the girls were waiting in their room. We had them, many of them would go, that can't be true. It's like, really, that's what they're saying. And volunteers rallied and made the first design, which was a really poor design. I can say that because I designed it. But they rallied, and we rallied with the funding for not only food and other things they needed, but for materials to make these washable pads. And I, along the way, along with rallying volunteers, asked the question, who's teaching them what a period is? And they said, no one, you can. That wasn't a thing I was yet comfortable with. And I certainly wasn't yet a world expert in sex and menstruation. Something, by the way, I never expected to be. A scientist, engineer.
Oh my gosh, but you kind of walked right into it, right?
I did. And I've been asked before, why did you feel like you needed to answer it right then? In just 3.5 weeks from the call that I'd gotten to being back in Kenya and tickets already purchased to be there and not knowing how to respond. But I was not coming without a solution, period. We rallied to make 500 of these kits. There were 500 girls facing this issue in this community of children that were displaced. And so we brought 8 enormous green duffels filled with them. And I came ready to do the education. So we talked about how without periods, there would be no people. We talked about your amazing body is able to do this. We talked about one thing that was a little surprising maybe to some, and that was, how do you stand up for yourself if someone wants to exploit or harm you? And wonderfully, a woman that had graduated from this center stood up and said, if a boy bother you, I tell you what to do. You tell him zip it. I said, just zip it. That was her counsel, which, admit it, you wouldn't have forgotten it either. And then afterwards, after this great discussion about why they matter and that they could be the next Wangari Maathai, who is a Kenyan Nobel Peace Prize winner for the Greenbelt movement, the first girls came out. I was by the door, ready to, thank them for coming. And they said, "Thank you so much. Before you came, we had to let them use us if we wanted to leave the room and go to class." I was hoping that didn't mean what I feared it meant. And there were another 250 girls coming in because we didn't have a space sufficient for everyone. And it turned out that they confirmed later, being exploited in exchange for a single disposable pad. And that was the moment Days for Girls was born.
First of all, that is such a viscerally powerful thing to hear. And I can imagine, because my next question to you is going to be, did you have any fears that came up around this? But it almost sounds like this became a mission pretty quickly. I mean, it becomes more of a, I need to do something, not should I, or what
Oh,
am I afraid of?
100%.
So you woke up in the middle of the night and this came to you, which I think is just like, that to me alone is just so telling. Do you feel like throughout the process of building the organization, because I mean, Celeste, this organization it is amazing what you have done. I am absolutely in awe of you. Seriously. It's kind of like taking that ability to build something and just growing it and bringing more community and more community in. How did it incrementally grow? Like, how did you build that?
For one thing, it wasn't me. If I was sewing, there would have been a few hundred pads, right, or thousands. It was the power of we. And when we make invitations that are not worried about who's going to get credit, not worried about who will say yes or no. Honestly, when I came home, people were devastated that that could be true. And few believed that even the menstrual inequity need could be beyond that orphanage, not realizing that what do homeless women do? What do foster girls do? What does a woman that's choosing between fuel for her gas tank to get to the next job interview and a pad do? Anywhere they have to choose between food, shelter, and hygiene, food and shelter wins, right? Your child's tuition wins. And so the indignities and lost opportunities that add up around our planet, an estimated 500 million people need this around the world. So imagine that because of stigma, we didn't address that yet at the time. And I was hitting that when it came home. People didn't want to talk about it. People are like, "You've got to be wrong about this." And I have a habit of asking people to find out for themselves, not demanding that they come my direction, not demanding that they have to do it my way or do it in a way that is anything but authentic for them. So one of the powerful solutions for me in leadership has been to invite people to say, what if we were the solution? What if we could create a pad that was, let's listen, let's be innovative. And by the way, now we have 30 iterations later, 2 patents for the genius of this pad that is a result of listening to those we serve and serve with. And the curriculum, same way, over 70 iterations. It takes the ability and willingness to fail forward. It takes the ability to say, those that have a solution, need a solution, and have a circumstance that can change, that's what matters. So let's lean in together. Everyone has a place at this table. Let's make sure we're not creating any division. Let's keep inviting, listening, pay attention, and show up. And that has been the difference. It's about inviting. It's about recognizing the power of each of us and our unique contributions, our unique talents, and creating a solution. If that's where you're coming from, people can show up and people can be part of the solution with you.
Oh, that is so amazing. I feel like when you think of the amount of the communities that you've affected, so when you started in Kenya, did you go back and do work there first, build it out, and then start to expand to other countries? Like, how did that evolve?
A little of both. I did, of course, go back, really worked on listening, paying attention to the curriculum needs they had. What questions were they asking? What else did they need? The first time we went back and asked about the pads, it was completely embarrassing because they said it looked like a pad. First of all, raise your hand if you would hang a soiled white material that looked like a pad in your front yard with a Mincy stain on it. No, I hadn't thought of that. But I knew to listen, and they had ribbons on them so it would hold it. And the girls explained that when they walked, it would slip forward and they would look like a man. So it's like pockets. We're going to need pockets on these things. And so we listened all along. And whenever I returned, invited them to be the ambassadors of health with me, to take on the education with me. We would do it together, and I would trust them to take the lead. And this, by the way, became kind of infectious because while I was telling people, you don't believe me, it's happening where you are, ask your friends or ask where you're doing development if they have this need as well. And they would come back, they need this as well. Thankfully, I had some programming education and training, so I was able to make a website really early on when that wasn't easy for everyone to do. And I put the patterns on there, I put the education on there, and I said, here, let's do this together. Let's reach every girl everywhere, period, because all it is correct solutions that work for them, education, invite them to be part of it. All of us join together, repeat. And there were people at the time that said, one, nobody's going to talk about periods, and two, And I would be invited to go speak somewhere, and they'd say, I heard she's a great speaker. And then honestly and truly, on more than one occasion, had them cancel after they heard what I was talking about.
Wow.
But that doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, and obviously to you, right? I mean, this is something that you have charged forward and really made such a huge impact. But it sounds like different countries they trickled in. People were interested. You got the word out. You had a website. Like I know that it becomes the domino effect, but then you also had this stigma attached to it. So I feel like you were working with sort of two sides of it, right?
Absolutely.
Two kind of opposing sides the whole way. Now, you have said to me that you have had a very serendipitous, and I can see this in what I see you've accomplished. Have you had any specific moments that you really kind of took pause and said, that's a little bit of a God wink or something going on here that's a little interesting? I know you do.
The whole time. Can I tell you one? The whole time. If you don't believe in miracles, come be part of Days for Girls. It's breathtaking. So let me tell you one of the very, very first ones. We were struggling to find enough pairs of underwear. We were sending all the funding we had for food. And I'd already sent it. So we had to make this work on a shoestring and have very little left. And we'd asked everyone, please go find underwear. All the inexpensive options we'd used in the entire outlying counties and beyond, honestly, that we could find. And we were at the very end of packing all these kits that volunteers were bringing in pieces and parts. And it was just amazing. We literally had a few volunteers, two of them, sew till their fingertips bled because they were putting snaps on. Really just like leaning in such a huge way. So imagine we're down to the wire. We leave the next day and we are 50 pair of underwear short. Underwear, another thing you never thought you'd have on your podcast. Anyway,
it's a first for everything.
Right? So we were 50 pairs short. And I told my friend said, you can't show up at an orphanage 50 short. What are you going to do? I said, I don't know. But if I know anything, this isn't my project and it's clearly being led and it's going to show up. And she gave me that look like, right. And we kept working. And a man came to the door and said, excuse me, I brought a package all the way from Issaquah, about 2 hours drive. And they said to bring you this. And in the box was something sent by a friend who hadn't responded at all to my query that, can you help us? And it turned out she'd been on a vacation down a state south of us. And she saw at a dollar store some underwear. While on vacation, she packed up underwear and she sent it to her husband's office, who sent a courier all the way to where we were in Linden. And they arrived at the door right then, and he said, rather embarrassedly, is that a word? And sent this box, and inside were exactly 50 pair of underwear.
Okay, first of all, I just got to chill. And second of all, I think it's funny to say I just got to chill about the topic of underwear. But that is crazy. No, that is something seriously. That is, yes. Okay. Now I understand what you're saying. That's one of many.
Oh, many. And some of them, I
Celeste.
promise you would not even believe them. I don't usually, do you want to hear another one? I don't usually share it because people would not believe it. There are witnesses, there were 4 of us there, but you would not believe it. It's been amazing, but equally amazing to me is that people before we more now are talking about the importance of menstrual equity and making sure period poverty is ended. But at the time, especially, imagine you could be choosing to work with the Red Cross or putting in water for wells, which are both important, and you decide that you're wanting to help people have access to menstrual care. That is amazing. They would talk to complete strangers about periods. That is perhaps one of the greatest miracles of all. And even bigger still has been, I knew we were giving them their days back. And I knew, sorry, that we were helping them not be abused in some cases, and it would be worth it if it was 10. And I knew that I learned along the way they were using mattress stuffing and torn school uniform pieces and feathers and sitting on piles of sand and waiting in huts and considered untouchable and going through many, many incredible struggles, being slapped because there was a stain that happened in the classroom. I knew that could be alleviated in part, but I didn't know how much they would stand up for others, how much they would be the champion. In Zimbabwe, one woman, I checked back in and she explained, oh, yes, I have been going to school and teaching this. And when I have kits that I can make, I take it to them. Well, Zimbabwe is a place that we were told no one could volunteer because resources are so scarce there. So I asked, how are you doing that? Because we didn't yet have an enterprise system that would help her do that. And she was one of the reasons that started in earnest. And her answer was, I just skip my meals so that I can have a bus fare to go to the schools. That is amazing. And just as importantly, she had HIV, so antiretroviral meds don't work if you didn't eat. And she knew that. And it was that important to her to go make sure girls knew they were not to be shamed. They were actually amazing. And that has been replicated all over this planet by upwards of 70,000 volunteers and enterprise participants. That is amazing.
Oh my God. I mean, Celeste, when you think about this has been how many years? This has been
It's 14 years.
14 years.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, if you could have had even an inkling of an imagination as to where this would be now, back then, but in a way, it's kind of like you wouldn't have known that. But then again, the drive that you had was so powerful that really anything could happen, right? Like anything. I am completely in awe. I feel like the power of what you do, though, I'm sure it just expands and expands. Do you hear from people every day? I mean, I'm sure this community that is around you is volunteers, but then you also have the community members within those villages that you've helped. I mean, have you stayed in touch with these girls in different ways, or how does that all look?
Yes, the girls and especially the women and men that volunteer, and their stories are so incredible. Some of them employ 18, 19 people to help make kits and to go out and teach about them. And supporters 2 days for girls help them do that. And their local chieftains and NGOs buying Days for Girls pads helps them do that. It's phenomenal all over the world, 145 countries. And this is why I'm saying it's the power of we. It's the power of what happens when we trust each other and lean in. There were people that said in the beginning, why would you share your patterns? They could do them completely wrong, and they do sometimes. But what's phenomenal is they lean way harder into doing them right because they want to make them last for the girls. These, we say they last 2 to 4 years, and honestly, we have reports of them lasting as long as 6. So that's a lot of years, but the education is priceless and passes on from person to person to person. I am amazed that something so small that was hidden in stigma could have such huge consequences for positive. And I am curious what other keys to reversing cycles of poverty and violence against women and inequity are hidden that we haven't found and discovered yet. What I do know is that it's okay that we don't all care about the same thing. It's important that we each follow our passion because literally the world's future depends on it. Each of us matter, and it is our passions, no matter how small, no matter how taboo, no matter how different, it's the one that calls to each of us that matters.
Oh my gosh. I so feel this from you because I feel like every step of the way you have known where it's going, like what direction you're taking it in. Now let me ask you this. Now that you're still working obviously with Days for Girls, you're still very much a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think of the power that you have, Celeste.
Yo.
Power is maybe not the right word, but you know what I mean? The conviction and the strength of will that you have.
Mm-hmm.
You can move mountains in a lot of ways. And have you thought about what's the next thing? I mean, I know that it sounds like there's bigger projects out there to tackle, right? You're probably going to have projects ahead of you for the rest of your life, right?
Yes.
But what are you passionate about? What are the things that you want to continue to take to that next level?
Ooh, such a good question. I really, really want people to recognize the ability they have to overcome trauma and have people recognize the power that comes when we don't other each other, when we don't look for what we should suspect about each other, but rather look for the places we can come together. I feel like it is of huge danger right now that there is so much suspicion and separation and categorization that's happening right now. And I personally have witnessed 3 passports full of how much we have in common and how important it is. The power of us coming together is tremendous. So I really would love to help the world see that. So my keynotes and even the new book that I finished really is the hope that is in that. And so I just feel deeply honored to be part of the journey of Days for Girls and deeply honored to be able to share my story and the story of Days for Girls because of its significance to others, of the significance to so many solutions around the world. I feel like it's the New York of problems. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere.
I love that. Well, let me ask you though, I this is something that is kind of came to me because you mentioned this earlier and it's intriguing to me. You know, you talk about your background and where you came from, and that is clearly a driver of what you've done up to date, right? When someone tells you that something can't be done, tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, that, my friend, that is my secret sauce. If you tell me something can't be done, look out to a fault because it's like, really, I really love taking on challenges and really love pulling people together to watch what happens. And for me, that's like beautiful architecture, and that's the beauty to me of differences. It's like, no. It's not a problem that we're different. That is a huge asset. The only time there's a problem is when we fail to recognize the strength in others. When we fail to be humble enough to say, I can do this and this, and I'm not good at this, you're good at this, let's put these puzzle pieces together. I love that. So honestly, that is, go ahead, tell me it can't be done.
That is great. So we have, well, first of all, we're going to post everything in the show notes. So we'll have the links to reach you. But I want you to talk a little bit about the book. This
Oh,
is something that I'm ready. I'm ready to read this book like today.
I'm so
So tell us a
excited.
little bit about it. Yeah.
The Power of Days, a story of resilience, dignity, and the fight for women's equity is the title. And the Power of Days, because it's about what happens when we keep leaning forward and learning from the journey as we go. It covers some of, in the beginning, as many successful founders' books do, about before the organization is founded, and covers the journey and mines from it those things that happened that I learned from and what I learned from in each of them. And then it goes forward to the experience of Days for Girls growing day by day, and the rallying, the global rallying, and the stories of these phenomenal heroes all over the world, what they went through brought them the passion for this solution, and how they've taken it to new heights. And I love that. It was very difficult to write, by the way, because I didn't want to tell my story. I wanted to just say, there I was in Kenya, and keep going. And a friend that is an editor, it has a small press and said, no, I want this to go with the big one. She said she would look at the early pages, and she wrote me and said, emailed and said, call me. And so I called her, and her answer was, uh-uh. I'm like, what? And she said, no, you don't get to do that. You don't get to put in a prologue. There I was, a 5-year-old, barefoot, homeless girl. And then I went to Kenya. You do not get to, you don't get to do that. So I went through the experience of unpacking it and unpacking the experience. And honestly, that was cathartic in sometimes like painful way, right? And then, but I didn't want it to be about, oh, poor me. I wanted it to be about, look at the beauty of the breadcrumbs that all tied together. If because I went through this, I understood this. And then how do you tell the story of 70,000 amazing people all over the planet, and you want their stories to be told? How do you choose which ones? So choosing which stories represented many, and choosing how to say it, and then contacting them all to make sure, is this what you recall? Did I get this correct? Honestly, it took 4 years of writing on planes, trains, and in hotel rooms, and in my little office at home, because I wanted to get it right. And I'm so thrilled that Bella Books responded in the way they did, and have the expectations they do for this book. And I'm so thrilled with all those who have read early copies of it and said, oh, I want to share this with my friends. I'm really
Yes.
looking forward to the healing, the hope, and the inspiration that others will want to dive in with their why, with their how. I'm so excited for that.
Well, and with their yes, right? I mean, this is
Yes.
kind of this is a blueprint. I feel like this is a blueprint for people that even if it's an inkling of an idea, and we tend to kind of go to that place of, oh, whatever, this is, I couldn't do anything. How can I make a difference type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you just kind of, I mean, instinctually, it feels like you just kept going. It's amazing to me. And I feel like the serendipity is pretty eye opening just hearing, and I can't wait to hear more of the stories in the book. that's my excitement is to read that book and see. But now, so next up for you is that you've got the book. The book is out. Are you doing any additional work? Are you just? I mean, obviously you've got a lot on your plate.
Mm-hmm.
But is there anything else that you're excited about that you want to share with us?
The book is available for pre-sale. It comes out October 3rd, so there's a lot of
October
work.
3rd.
Would
Okay.
you believe how much work it is to prepare for that, so that as many as possible see it? Imagine if this becomes a bestseller, national bestseller, we can affect so many more lives,
Oh my
and
gosh,
so
yes.
many. So this is important to me in the same way that Days for Girls has and is so important to me. I am doing a lot of keynotes, a lot of, I'm actually working on the next book. You should probably never say that, but it's about that recognition that between an experience that happens and the moment we determine and define what it means to us, for ill or for good, or how we're going to take it personally or personally, this is the book that is in me right now. And I'm starting to serve on additional boards that give me a chance to express my leadership and assist in more ways. The truth is, I love Days for Girls. I love every day of it. I used to get up at 4 a.m. and I would work 18-hour days in a blink. And so now I'm having a little more traditional schedule and enjoying time with my family while writing and promoting and doing keynotes and watching for the next, because I didn't choose this. I knew it was time for me to step from the day to day, and thankfully had built with succession throughout our organization so that it could be sustainable and believe in doing that. But it was as shocking to me as anyone else when it was very clear to me it's time. And honestly, in my life, I recognize that every time a season has closed, there was something else waiting for me. So I'm as eager to know as you are what this something else is.
Oh my gosh, Celeste, it is so great to talk to you. Seriously, I feel like this is a gift that you have given us today, because it really opens up possibility and just the idea of how much one person can do to affect change through a community, right? Through building community and continuing to say yes and going forward. It just has been so enlightening to talk to you, and I really, really appreciate your time. I am getting that book, and I cannot wait for the second one to come. Honestly. But thank you so much, Celeste. It's been such a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, it's been a joy. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, that's it for now. Until next time. Thanks for listening to the Journeys Through Change podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or really wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us and leave a review if you've enjoyed this episode. And share it with a friend or on social media to spread the good word, so more women like you can find us and join in on the fun. For more information on the podcast or Day by Day book, go to livedaybyday.com.